You've been known by many as the sports guru, Black Schwab. So really, man, it's been a lot of conversation about just the best players in Chicago, Roosevelt, Central, football, basketball. So what I want to get from you is I want to start with football first. Because as you know, basketball is real big in EC. So let's start with football, and just give me your perspective on best players from each position. Is one or two players, and then your best overall player that you ever seen during your time of watching sports.
Um, let's start with football. Well,
Quarterback.
quarterback. When I was at, I won't speak on my era because the football program wasn't at nearly as productive as it eventually became at Central. It was a basketball school. Like at the first year of Central, when I went there, and my years at Roosevelt, it was more about basketball. But if I'm going to speak on football, I'll have to go to the EC Central era. The best quarterback that I saw, talent-wise, I'm gonna say Eric Irvin, because I didn't see very many quarterbacks. It was more about the running backs and the position receivers who really stood out. But Eric Irvin had one of the strongest arms that I saw on a kid growing up. I used to call him Cunningham because his throwing motion was exactly like Randall Cunningham, and he could really get the ball down the field, and then he could run with it too.
Yeah.
And I watched Central High School football over the years, and I didn't see a quarterback that had the arm strength that he had. And I think probably at the younger stages, that's something that they'll look for, because as far as mechanics and things like that, they won't hone in on those skills until you get to the next level. In high school, it's more about your athletic ability. A quarterback won't be good in high school because he can read defenses or something like that. He's going to be good because he can throw the ball down the field, or he can just tuck it in and take off and run with it.
So where did Keon Frazier fit in that? Marcus Reeves, the John Masseys, the Bob Gillis type quarterbacks fit in?
Those guys, I really I can't really tell you a whole lot about them, because when I went to the games during those eras, they weren't the ones that I was really watching. I paid more attention to the running backs and the receivers. I've heard a lot about Keon Frazier, but I can't really speak to Keon Frazier because I didn't zero in on him when the few times that I went and watched Central play during his era. I heard that he was good though. I heard that he was really good, and he got a scholarship. Marcus Reeves, another one that I got to see briefly, really didn't hone in on what he was doing, but he was a pretty good quarterback too. And of course, he got a scholarship offer to go play Division I college football, and that says a lot. If a Division I program is scouting you and they see something in you to the point to where they offer you a scholarship, then there definitely has to be something there.
Okay, so as of right now, you're saying the best quarterback was Woontz?
Yes.
Okay. Running back is huge. As you know, Martell France, Royce Robertson, Willie Collins, Sam Daniels. I mean, I can go on. Dante Smith. All them guys been named, but who's the best to you?
Martell France.
Why?
Size, natural ability, power, speed. He was the prototype running back. I think he was about 205 his senior year. From what I was told, he had like 4.3 speed. Now, a lot of people don't know this, and I used to play with Martell France when I was younger, and he was a lot younger. And I saw Martell France play football. I helped him develop as a football player when he was a really little kid. And this is a true story. He'll vouch for me on this. But when I saw him at EC Central, I was blown away, but not surprised, because Martell France, at the age of about 5 or 6, was already rock solid. I mean, all of this was his arms and stuff. He was already developed, but that had a lot to do with his bloodline, because a lot of the McGee's, which is his mom's side of the family, a lot of them were really, really built without even touching weights. But I saw him as a runner, and he just overpowered people. It just seemed like he was a man among boys when he was out there. He had the speed to get in the open field and make people get small, and then he could run through people. Martell France reminds me of how Adrian Peterson is today. Royce Roberson I got to see a little bit of because he was on that team, but he wasn't the featured back. So that next year he became the featured back, and I think I may have saw him play once or twice, but I remember he had really good stats, and of course he got a scholarship to go to the University of Wisconsin, and they had one of the best programs in the country at that time. And that, I think he was there during the time when they made it to the Rose Bowl.
Okay. Fullback.
Who's holding the camera? My man Carl Biddings, Big B. Could catch the ball out the backfield, had decent speed, but could just run people over. You couldn't send a smaller guy to tackle him. He had to be game tackled a lot because he was, as a running back, he was one of the bigger guys on the field, and he was really strong. And he probably would tell people he got strong from lifting weights, but that's not the truth, though. That's just in his DNA. He was strong the first time he picked up a spoon and started eating. He realized how strong he was. But I think Carl Biddings was the best fullback that I saw, and he was probably the only featured fullback that I saw where they used him to carry the ball, where he did the bulk of the running. He was actually like a tailback at the same time, but he was used as a fullback who carried the ball a lot like Earl Campbell was back in his day, a really big guy that used to run people over, but at the same time, he was the featured back in the offense.
Wide receiver.
I watched the previous interviews, and I heard a lot of talk. I saw Antoine Bullard play. Antoine Bullard was really good, but I have to go with Keon Jackson. Keon Jackson had unbelievable athletic ability, and I also have known Keon Jackson since he was a really small kid. I watched Keon play. Keon not only was a great wide receiver, but he was also a great defensive back. But just his quickness and just his ball skills and his hands, I mean, he had the whole package. And of course, someone recognized him because he was offered a Division I scholarship, and he eventually went on and had a very successful career playing Division I ball. I think it was at the was University of Toledo that he went to. Toledo. Yeah, and I got a chance to see him play on television a few times. Hate that he didn't make it to the next level, but I'm sure that he's doing okay because he's a good kid, got a good head on his shoulders.
Now let's talk about O-lineman.
Once again, my knowledge is a little vague on that topic, but I do know about Tom Lukowski was one guy that I saw play, and I used to remember reading about that 92 EC Central team, and Coach E talked about how Tom Lukowski was a really hard worker, that he'd lift weights all day if you let him, but he was really tough. He was a really good lineman, and that team probably, because they were so good, I don't think many people recognize him because of, you had the running back with Martell France and Royce Roberson, and that was, what they were featured as. But Tom Lukowski was a really good offensive lineman, and I think that
D-lineman.
I heard about Robert Smith. I remember seeing Robert Smith coming up, and all of a sudden he got really big, but that was in his bloodline too, because his dad, Lucky Smith, was probably the biggest man that I ever saw in the city of East Chicago. But Robert Smith, another one, was really good. Too strong, too athletic. Nobody could contain him. The defensive linemen and the offensive linemen, people don't talk about them, and they're the guys they're the most important guys because they create all the space for the running backs to maneuver. They give the quarterback time, and then from a defensive standpoint with Robert Smith, he caused so much havoc with the offensive line, with the running game, and with the quarterbacks, because of his athletic ability and his just brute strength. There weren't any guys on the offensive side of the ball who were big enough or strong enough to keep him out the backfield.
So the best O lineman is Tom Bukowski and D line Robert Smith.
Yes.
Okay. Linebacker.
I heard a lot about Dante Smith. I did get to see him play once or twice. I can't really speak personally on him, but once again, he was a guy who did earn a Division I scholarship, and like I said before, that says a lot about him and that a lot to his credit as a football player. Dante Smith was a really good linebacker, good size, good speed, good athleticism, which is what you need to be a great linebacker. All the great linebackers that we've seen in the NFL all had good size, and they were all really quick and very athletic, and Dante Smith definitely fit into that category. Cornerback, Keon Jackson. I spoke a little bit about him earlier when I was talking about the best receiver. I used to call him Prime Time. He may not remember this, but every time I used to see him, I used to call him Prime Time because he was a return man too. He reminded me so much of Deion Sanders because he was just so explosive out there. I mean, if he got a pick six, he could legitimately take it to the house. If he got between his man and the quarterback, he had a legit shot to take it all the way back. Antoine Bullard was a good D-back too. I got to see him play. He was pretty good too. Safeties, Damon Glenn. Damon Glenn was a really good safety, the best safety to come out of Central. And of course, everyone knows he went on to play at the University of Wisconsin. They gave him a full scholarship, and he happened to go during that era when Wisconsin was really good, and they made it to the Rose Bowl that one season.